A handful of states are challenging a U.S. federal environmental policy aiming to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. We'll have more on why the states feel the Biden administration may have gone too far. Plus, U.S. climate envoy John Kerry has announced he's leaving his position. We'll take a look at what's next for the top climate official and how he plans to address climate issues from other angles. And efforts to advance nature's rights to exist takes a step forward in Colorado. We'll explain. Hello and welcome to EarthX News, where we focus on sustainability and the environment. I'm Christina Thompson. Let's get into some of the biggest headlines facing our planet. A federal environmental policy is being challenged in court. A group of nearly 24 states are suing the government over new highway emissions rules that took effect in early January. The policy from the Federal Highway Administration and the U.S. Department of Transportation requires state transportation departments to create targets for carbon dioxide reduction and then send a progress report on meeting the prescribed benchmarks to the federal agencies. In the complaint, the state claims President Biden, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, and the FHA leader overstepped their authority in taking steps to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, arguing in part, quote, Congress has not given FHWA or DOT authority to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, nor can the agencies compel the states to administer a federal regulatory program or mandate them to further executive policy wishes absent some other authority to do so, which is lacking as to this rule. The states maintain only Congress is authorized to advance greenhouse gas emission rules and accuse Biden and his administration of violating the law. They are asking the court to vacate the rule and block its enforcement. Germany is approaching a huge milestone in the effort to reach net zero, celebrating their carbon emissions dropping to a 70-year low. The milestone was accomplished in part thanks to cuts in industrial production and lower coal generation. But the celebrating ends there, as there's still more to be done with the country's climate goals. Germany is still Europe's largest economy and their biggest polluter, and even more with the emissions cut, it's still not on track to meet its climate goals. The country's climate-harming emissions dropped to 673 million tons of CO2. That's a reduction of 73 million and below the government's annual target of 722 million, according to estimates from some oversight think tanks. However, only 15% of the overall emissions savings are because of higher energy efficiency standards or more renewables in the mix. About half the reduction is because of demand reduction and production cuts from energy-intensive industries linked to the crisis triggered by Russia's war in Ukraine. The research group's director explained that's why Germany is still not on track to reaching its 2030 climate goals. The economy ministry called the forecast very pessimistic, saying the full effect of its efforts to speed up renewables will only be visible this year. Now, while opinions are conflicting, the facts remain. Germany was the world's worst performing major economy in 2023. The country also recently started to rely more heavily on electricity supplied by its neighbors, turning net importer for the first time. It's expected if the economy picks up in 2024, so will emissions. A key U.S. climate official is set to step down from his role this year. John Kerry, former Massachusetts senator and former presidential candidate, announced he'll be vacating his position as America's climate envoy. While Kerry says he's leaving his post, he plans to continue to work on climate issues from other angles. Sources say Kerry is due to depart the administration by the spring and is expected to join President Biden's re-election campaign. Kerry has stated he'll do whatever he can to help re-elect President Biden and will campaign on what Biden has done on the climate issue. Kerry spent the last 3 years as the top climate official in the U.S. Prior to that, Kerry helped broker the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement while he was the Secretary of State during the Obama administration. The Supreme Court has ruled against the development of a copper and gold mine in Alaska. The High Court's decision to toss the state's plan to revive the project, called the Pebble Mine, comes after the Environmental Protection Agency shut it down last year. Invoking the Clean Water Act, the EPA blocked the project because of concerns about the impact the large open-pit mine could have on local areas which support the world's largest sockeye salmon fishery. This all comes after local leadership filed a complaint with the nation's highest court to overturn the EPA's decision last July. Alaska's lawmakers can still try and reverse this latest decision, but they would have to start in a lower court and appeal any unfavorable decisions to the Supreme Court. Mining for uranium is making a comeback in the U.S. For the first time in 8 years, operations have resumed at 3 mines along the Arizona-Utah border. One of the mines in Arizona is located only 7 miles south of the Grand Canyon within a new indigenous national monument, which President Biden designated just last year, while the other 2 are located in Utah's quarter of the Four Corners region. Energy Fuels Incorporated is the company behind the mines, and in a statement about its decision to ramp up production, suggested the resurgence in digging for the mineral comes amidst the increased demand for nuclear power and rising uranium prices, saying in part, quote, "Prices have reached a 16-year high at nearly $90 per pound." As well as global government policies supporting nuclear energy to address global climate change and the need to reduce U.S. reliance on Russian and Russian-controlled uranium and nuclear fuel. The U.S. still buys uranium from Russia despite sanctions imposed after Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, but lawmakers have been seeking to divest from the country. Despite the push to find alternatives to fossil fuel-generated electricity, environmentalists and tribes in the Southwest have voiced their opposition to the mining projects. They say their concerns center on water supplies, water quality, negative health outcomes for indigenous communities, and the destruction of culturally sensitive land. A federal court has struck down President Biden's new appliance regulations for dishwashers and washing machines. In its ruling, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals said repeal efforts by the Energy Department in 2022 were arbitrary and capricious, and the department didn't properly weigh alternatives or demonstrate the new rules resulted in more efficiency. The court's decision stems from an attempt by the Biden administration to toss a Trump-era policy that created a new short-cycle product class for dishwashers and washing machines, which relaxed water and energy conservation standards. At the time, the Trump administration said the policy change would help consumers save time and expand consumer choice. But in 2022, the Biden administration published a new rule aiming to reinstate federal efficiency policies that were previously in place, basically scrapping the Trump-era changes. The administration argued the change would save consumers billions in energy and water bills over the lifespan of the appliances. However, trade groups and appliance manufacturers objected to the DOE's proposed rule, claiming the changes could hurt appliance performance and lead to longer wash times with lower efficiency. The court ruling means the Energy Department must now revisit its policy and begin drafting new efficiency standards. The federal government has approved a plan to keep the lights on at California's last operating nuclear plant. The Biden administration finalized a $1.1 billion aid package for the Diablo Canyon power plant in early January of this year. California planned to close down that plant, which is operated by Pacific Gas and Electric, by 2025 and replace it with clean energy. But now the extra funds will keep the facility producing electricity until at least 2030. That's 5 years beyond when it was set to shut down. In 2022, the California legislature voided the deal at the urging of Governor Gavin Newsom, who said the power was needed to combat blackouts caused by stresses on the energy grid due to climate change. Some electric vehicle owners are facing new challenges amidst the bitter cold in parts of the U.S. Sub-zero temperatures in certain cities, like Chicago, are giving drivers a lesson on the impact frosty weather can have on their electric cars. Several industry reports say freezing temperatures can drain EV batteries overnight and reduce driving range. With the cold zapping battery life coupled with more EVs on the market, there's increased demand for charging stations, resulting in the long lines that EV owners in places like the Windy City have experienced. Experts argue that the issue isn't with EVs themselves, but with the need to expand and improve the charging infrastructure across the country. One Colorado community is taking steps to ensure Mother Nature has a spokesperson in their area. The Board of Trustees in Nederland, that's about an hour northwest of Denver, authorized the appointment of 2 legal guardians to represent a section of Boulder Creek and its watershed. These guardians will be a voice for the creek to the group of local officials. Activists are hailing the move, believed to be the first in U.S. history under a rights of nature movement, which promotes a legal theory that ecosystems and species have legal rights to exist, thrive, and regenerate, and should have the same inherent protections as people and corporations. However, some industry groups say the laws could be used to block development. Environmentalists see the move in Colorado as a step towards advancing laws recognizing the rights of rivers, forests, animals, and ecosystems in the U.S. The move in America's West comes as Ireland considers a nationwide referendum to constitutionally acknowledge nature's rights. The impact of climate change is being felt along one of the world's most important trade routes. Authorities say they've had to cut shipping crossings in the Panama Canal by more than a third after a round of severe weather struck the Central American country. Leonardo Feldman has that story.
A severe drought plaguing the Panama Canal may cost up to $700 million. This is because authorities were forced to cut 36% of the ship crossings due to that very issue. This drought issue is a global issue. It has the Mississippi River, the Rhine, the Amazon, the Yangtze. Practically all the rain routes of the world are being affected. And of course, and we have been saying it for several years now, the Panama Canal has a fundamental disadvantage in that it is the only global shipping route in the world that operates with fresh water. Ricardo Vasquez is the authority administrator for the Panama Canal, one of the most important waterways for world trade. Officials say El Niño's weather and climate change are the reason why the Central American nation is experiencing a lack of rainfall. Many of the adjustments we have made have been aimed at allowing everyone an opportunity to transit the canal and prevent them from taking advantage of the condition of the Panama Canal to make us responsible for the price increases that they themselves are introducing as a result of the lack of water scarcity issue. Authorities are urging Panama to find new water sources while drought plagues their country. For EarthX, I'm Leonardo Feldman.
Coming up, the State of the Climate Report was released and it talks a whole lot about storms. We'll keep the weather conversation going after the break. Each year, more than 500 scientists in more than 60 countries contribute to an international review. It's called the State of the Climate Report. The annual assessment documents the planet's ever-changing environmental conditions. For 2022, it revealed the Earth's climate system hit a number of records, including a record high concentration of greenhouse gases, plus ocean heat, as well as global sea levels. They were the highest on record. Joining us now to discuss is one of the many scientists who contributed to the yearly review, Professor of Atmospheric Science and Meteorology at North Carolina A&T State University, Dr. Ademe Mekonnen. Dr. Mekonnen, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
So can you explain what is the 2022 State of the Climate Report?
As you just said in the introduction, the climate report shows increase in temperatures globally. But of course, this temperature could be different. The increase could be different at different places. But overall, for the planet as a whole, temperature has increased by about 0.25 to 0.3 globally, degrees centigrade. What this means is if we're taking the average, 30 years climatology average between 1991 and 2020, and then the temperature in 2022 was above this average. So that's the increase in temperature. The Arctic in 2022 was both warmer and wetter. This has a very significant implication for the Arctic climate. Because as you know, Arctic means it's ice, it's glaciers. And there are observations actually both in Antarctica and Arctic. Iceberg is being affected, particularly in Antarctica, which is the southern pole. Extreme temperatures were actually causing the ice shelf to sort of collapse. So this has a huge, very important implication for the globe as a whole.
A lot of your focus is on Africa and the Atlantic. What other changes are you seeing specifically in those areas?
In Africa, what we see is both temperature increase, but also precipitation pattern is also changing. For some parts of Africa, what we see is severely lower than average precipitation. So this has a very important consequence. What I mean by this is say, if there is drought in one part of Africa, then that would be a big problem for economies of those countries. If you contrast, say, in the United States, we know there was drought for many years in the Midwest, but it was not on the news. It has never been on the news. We don't feel it because other things like transportation system and overall the economy is mobile. But for those countries in Africa, that's very, very difficult. Mm-hmm. So communities, the society will be affected as a result of that. So we have seen droughts, but also flooding, like places in Khartoum, Sudan, which is heavy rainfall. As a result of upstream heavy rainfall, then a lot of flooding. So the precipitation pattern is also changing. The nature is changing, actually. By nature, what I mean is rainfall over those areas is normally between June and September, mid-June to end of September. Now, the rainfall seems to be actually concentrating around July, mid-July to mid-August. So what this means is heavy rainfall, a lot of rainfall in a short amount of time. So that's a lot of flooding. That results in overflowing rivers and stuff like that. So we have seen this in Africa.
Is there anything maybe a bit unexpected that came out of the report, or any sort of positive news in your findings?
Positive news, it's very difficult to find positive news. The result is we seem to highlight the negative part because that has very important consequences.
Right. We covered a story earlier about how Germany just hit a 70-year low with emissions. So I know that there's still a long way to go, but I'm wondering if we're starting to see any sort of a positive trend form globally.
Yeah, there are also below average situations in pocket areas over Africa. This is centered around West Africa, around the country of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. The temperatures were annually, I'm talking annually, not a single month. So annually, the temperatures were lower than average. But the normal temperature over those areas, summertime is like 35, 40 degrees centigrade. Okay. And lower temperature, 1 degree centigrade lower or 0.5 degrees centigrade lower, doesn't mean much, but there was lower than average temperature. This is for 2020.
Hopefully we start to see some trends get a little bit more positive in future reports. Dr. Ademe Mekonnen, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Coming up, scientists embark on a mission to find new forms of marine life. Stay tuned. We'll have more on their search for undiscovered sea creatures when we return. A marine science group has discovered dozens of new species in the waters around the Canary Islands. Alex Salvi has more.
The ocean is vast, beyond most people's comprehension, filled with marine life, both known and undiscovered. The Ocean Census Program wants to learn more about it, setting out into the waters off Tenerife to better understand the unknown.
Mission Control, can you...
Traveling in the Pisces 6 submersible, Science Director Alex Rogers and his team are discovering dozens of new sea creatures.
Well, we found lots of new species from a variety of groups, particularly mollusks, so snails and slugs.
Many of the new discoveries can only be seen under a microscope, such as the Granulina nectin, a new marine snail, and the Ordontozona, a new shrimp species, all invisible to the naked eye. But what's unseen and previously unknown still plays a crucial role in better understanding how the underwater world functions.
We now understand more about the number of species that live here. It also tells us something about the food webs and the way that the marine ecosystems around the Canaries actually work.
The team went on 10 missions in December of last year, using divers to get to some of the locations unreachable by the submersible. They're shocked at what they were able to discover in such a short amount of time, and hope this is only the beginning of their success.
Imagine when we go to other parts of the world where there's been almost no scientific study done at all, or into the deep sea where we've only sampled a fraction.
The Ocean Census team hopes their findings can help protect the oceans. But with climates and ecosystems rapidly changing, it may be easier said than done.
I think it's fair to say that we are in a race against time.
Experts believe they've only uncovered 10 to 25% of all marine species. But those seeking to increase this number are doing what they can now, knowing that if they're too late, the opportunity will be gone forever. For EarthX, I'm Alex Salvi.
Alex Salvi, thank you. Before we leave you, marine biologists have made a breathtaking underwater discovery. Scientists say they've mapped the largest deep-sea coral reef to date off the U.S. Atlantic coast. Researchers say the reef's total area is nearly 3 times the size of Yellowstone National Park. It extends for over 300 miles from Florida to South Carolina and was found at depths ranging from 655 to just over 3,200 feet. Oceanographers say while they knew some coral was present off the Atlantic coast since the 1960s, the reefs remained a mystery in their size until new underwater mapping technology made it possible to construct 3D images of the ocean floor. And a heartwarming video captures the moment a once injured manatee was returned to the waters in Florida. The state's Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission said the marine mammal, nicknamed Allure in a nod to its predicament, was released into the Three Sisters Springs in the Crystal River National Wildlife Refuge on January 11th. State wildlife officials say the manatee underwent an almost year-long rehabilitation at the Tampa Zoo after it was found with a fishing lure hooked to its face and left flipper. Officials say the marine animal was rescued near Crystal River last February before it was nursed back to health. That's it for this edition of EarthX News. Please join us again next week. I'm Christina Thompson.